Welcome to On the Bench. I'm your host for this episode, Brendan Sinone. Zach, am I blinking enough for your liking?
Okay. Oh, you actually kind of freaked me out at first.
I was blinking too much or not enough?
No, not enough. Your eyes were very wide.
All right, that's Zach Blosty, and I got Chris Nee here as well. We are OTB, and we are here to talk about FSU recruiting specifically. So if you're not in FSU recruiting right now, you're not going to want to listen to this podcast or watch it. If you are, you're definitely going to want to. And I think more of you are interested than you're letting on. So let's get into it, guys. It's been a great few days for Florida State. Did we do a podcast when Kevin Wynn had committed? Had we already, or we talked about as if he was going to commit, correct?
I think it was that before he had actually announced, I'm pretty sure.
I think so as well. Yes, because for the commit draft, Chris picked Kevin to go first overall. A wink,
wink.
All right. So that was the context of that for Kevin. That was last week. That was on the 24th. So it's about a week ago. Kevin Wynn, 4-star defensive tackle from Greene County, Georgia, goes ahead, picks the Seminoles. He's 57th nationally overall. And guys, that kind of was the first domino to fall of what's been a really high-end week for Florida State. Before we get any further into this and start breaking down what has happened on the recruiting show for Florida State, a shout out to our sponsors. First, Chattanooga Whiskey, absolutely killing it in the craft distillery game. Chattanooga Whiskey does an amazing job with their entry-level bourbon. Their rye is, to me, one of the better ryes I've ever had. And their 111 proof cast strength offering of bourbon is exquisite and an amazing value. So Chattanooga Whiskey, you can find them throughout the Southeast. In Florida, they're all over the place at this point. You can get them at Total Wine. You can go to local stores like Market Square Liquor in Tallahassee, Brody's in Jacksonville, all over the place. And then also the Turner Group. If you're looking to buy or sell a home in the state of Florida, Colin Turner, Amy Turner, no one we would rather, or no one who we would send you to. Sorry, Colin. No one other. Oh, guys, I haven't.
I'm just going to throw a Becky in here to save your ass and recruit and get back to it. Becky.
Nope. Don't do that. Thanks, Chris. Sorry, Colin. The video. So before we get back to the Turner Group, I haven't had anything to eat today. I'm preparing for a colonoscopy tomorrow. Long listeners of the show know that the GI issues have been a long-standing problem since back when Berger was here still. Not that the two are related. But anyways, sorry, Colin. The Turner Group is where you want to go to buy or sell a home in the state of Florida. Colin is super connected. He works extremely hard. They do a great job there. Zach can attest to that personally. The Turner Group can really help you out and get you where you want to go in the state. So the Turner Group. Sorry, Colin, but I think he loves it when the ambling happens. So, all right, guys, it's been a really good week for Florida State. I don't know, Zach, where do you want to start? I mean, we talked about Kevin Wynn, which felt like a huge deal at the time, and it was, but it's just been good news after good news. What's the big takeaway, or where do we want to start with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you wrote yesterday, Brendan, if you guys haven't checked it out on Knowles 24/7, about not only FSU catching momentum on the recruiting trail, but they're landing a number of prospects at premium positions. And I think that's something that the staff views as super important. Obviously, you want to load up at every spot. But I mean, if you're talking about the all-in investment, like, you want to prioritize those premium positions, and that's what FSU's really done recently on the trail. They're going to venture into non-premium position additions here soon, and we'll get to that. But over the last week, I mean, starting with Kevin Wynn, Brendan talked about this in the article, but defensive tackles are becoming more and more of a premium position in football, and Kevin Wynn is all the way an interior guy, probably a one technique for Florida State. And FSU's just in love with Kevin Wynn. They were his first offer. They've done a great job throughout. FSU didn't always lead for Kevin Wynn. Before his official visits, they were the leader, but that thing really fluctuated between South Carolina and then most recently Georgia. But it just felt like with Florida State getting the last OB, they had the best shot to close, and that's what they did. They closed on the OB, committed to the staff on the last day of that official visit, and he told us that he had committed in that interview afterwards, and told the media, hey, hold off until I announce. Luckily, the entire media did, so kudos to everyone for doing that. But but yeah, just a massive addition. And then you move into the other additions that they've made to their 2025 class this week, and CJ Wiley is that next one that popped up. And like, to be completely candid, I was not thinking Florida State for CJ Wiley beforehand. I had written that I was leaning towards Georgia. I mean, if you look at the attendance of CJ Wiley's commitment ceremony, it was like 6 Georgia reporters. I don't think a single FSU reporter was there.
The reaction to the commitment was the most telling part. Is there
people were waiting for the switcheroo in the moment.
Yeah. So, and he admitted that afterwards in the interview. He's like, I think people were waiting for a hat switch or something. But he goes, no, I'm with the Noles. So, no, I mean, that was a surprise. But just digging more into that recruitment, I mean, we had kind of heard some positive buzz, like 5 minutes before the ceremony, Brendan.
We'd heard some on that Sunday evening, and then it went away. So it was like,
we had heard. So coming out of the OV, I reported that it was a Georgia versus FSU battle, and that LSU, who had been perceived as in his top 2 before the FSU visit, was not in it. And I felt confident reporting that. I did not feel confident going all the way and being like, hey, I think FSU is landing CJ Wiley, but we did hear some confidence coming out of the weekend. And that's to be expected with most official visits, but confidence, with 2 days ahead of his, scheduled commitment on that Sunday, like that was noteworthy. But like you said, Brendan, it kind of tailed off for a little bit. And then right before he announced on Tuesday, we had started hearing some positive buzz, but nothing, for us to go ahead and drop a pick. But yeah, it was wild. It shocked everyone there. Like you said, Brendan, shocked the recruiting industry. No one had a pick in for Florida State, but they land a super talented receiver at a position of need for FSU. 6'4", close to 200 pounds, runs a sub 11 in the 100-meter dash. Like, this is a guy that, not only is he, receiver becoming a real premium position. I mean, it has been, but if you look at the NFL, these guys are making tons of money. And, Wiley kind of fits the billing of the top end, like the premium of the receiver positions that you can get, because, I think slots are a little bit less valued. But if you look at that true, shout out to Dane Draper, but like a 9 wide receiver, I think CJ Wiley kind of fits that. And, he can move all over because of his speed, but yeah, man, he's just a massive get for Florida State. That, just kind of started, from Kevin Wynn to that kind of started the week off, and added yet another quality addition at a premium position.
Chris, for the folks at home, what is a definition of a premium position? What do you view as some of the top spots that you have to secure year in, year out to have a high-end football program?
Well, you wrote about it and you did it from the NFL viewpoint. I would add in the college game, and this goes back to arguments that Zach and us have had on this. It goes back to the positions that are tough to come by the second time around via the portal. We know FSU's a great portal place, but defensive tackles are super expensive. We definitely saw this past cycle. A guy like, Simeon Barrow, for example, fits that narrative.
You can't, no, you're not allowed to say that he was expensive. That's not allowed.
No.
And FSU was in that competition, whatever. Offensive tackle is another one of those spots where it's very tough to come by a guy. Quarterback's obviously always going to be one of those. That's the engine that makes your team go. FSU also in the past week, added Brady, 2026 quarterback, Smigel. I had to do it for Brendan. So yeah, it's just those positions where guys are tough to come by, and they're the guys that help you win games, and they're also the guys that at the next level get paid a great deal. On CJ Wiley, I think as a network, we rank him in the 200s. I think as a composite, he's like 130 something. I'm of the opinion he's a top 100 talent. He's got some awkward body movements, but in general, everything else about him I absolutely love. He's ultra athletic, very good pass catcher, very good at working down the field, good route runner, good work ethic, good kid if you've gotten to know him. I think he's a guy that's going to trend up. He's very fun to watch play the game of football. It's a massive get for FSU. We talked on the podcast last time we all got together that receiver was somewhat not a concern, but one that we were having trouble diagnosing exactly how it's going to turn out for FSU. Well, Wiley changes that narrative entirely in one snap of a moment. So to me, that's an ultra significant one of the past week.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on Wiley because I know a lot of people, especially like Georgia fans, were bringing up how it seemed kind of awkward in the room after he had announced, like his parents weren't like super enthusiastic. But I had talked to Ben Wolk, who does an amazing job covering Georgia for 24/7 Sports. After the announcement, and actually he was at the Future 50 event at IMG Academy this week that I attended, and him and another Georgia reporter that I spoke to there were basically like, that family shows no emotion ever. So like, yeah. And I'd heard that on Wiley's official visit to Florida State, like getting a smile out of him is difficult. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock into that. Like, yes, Georgia is going to prioritize CJ Wiley. Like, he was a top target for them at receiver. But I think a huge reason why Florida State won out here was because of staff stability. James Coley is Georgia's wide receiver coach. We're very familiar with James Coley. He used to coach at Florida State, obviously, in the Jimbo years. He has been at 3 jobs in the last 6 months. And I think CJ Wiley and his family very much like the idea that Ron Dugans has been at Florida State for as long as he has, for Norvell's entire tenure, and obviously a little bit before that. And that stability really, I think, was the deciding factor, talking to some people afterwards. So I wouldn't get too, overworked over the reactions and stuff after and his comments after the commitment ceremony. Like I said, there was all Georgia reporters there, so obviously they're going to ask about Georgia. And I think, I feel pretty good about Wiley sticking with FSU. And I think, from Georgia's side, they just landed another receiver. And I'm not sure that they feel like they're going to flip Wiley at this point.
On CJ, one thing to add is Charles, his father, who played at LSU, was an excellent defensive end there, then played in the NFL. Both Charles and his wife, CJ's mother, wanted him to really go through this process with an open mind, approach it that way. Charles actually spoke to Anna Adams about that during the process, about a month out from the decision, that they, understood the perception that Georgia was leading, but they wanted CJ to take his visits, gather his information, make his own decision, and it was his decision. And yeah, I think that's what occurred in that recruitment. So I think that's a good sign. I think very mature group of people in that room, the Wileys, both CJ and his parents. I'm kind of with Zach. I'm never dismissive of Georgia with an in-state kid, but I don't like have a instant concern that, oh, he committed just to flip later. Like, we got to get over to PTSD of other recruits and what they've done to us. It doesn't apply in all situations.
It is. I think for the rest of the cycle, like, that is going to, you see, get over it, Chris. It is until you actually maintain these commitments throughout an entire cycle. People aren't going to get over it. So
it is what it is, though.
Exactly. You can't be dwelling
worried
on
about it. It's
also
not going to make a difference. FSU needs to go win and show they can throw the ball around, and I think CJ Wiley will stick. If FSU is not good and Georgia's really good, and we all know there's financials that's involved in recruiting this day and age, then yeah, it's going to be something worth keeping an eye on. But you know what? When teams suck, they usually struggle to hold on to commitments. It's sort of the thing. When they're good, they usually don't as much. And I know FSU's had some bad luck here in recent years with retaining a few guys, and I get that. But like, I'm just over this whole like wishing for doom and gloom. Like, I think the fan base needs to maybe sit in a happy chair for a minute, realize they got a pretty good football team, and recruiting seems to be ticking up after all the complaints of earlier June.
Two words of wisdom. One, it's a lot easier to hold on to them than it is to flip them, right? Even if you've been burned before, just statistically, like, you have a commitment, you're probably going to maintain most of those commitments going into a signing day. And then I can't remember the other one. My brain is not doing well right now, guys. This is not probably was a poor idea to do this.
We need to get to another surprise commitment that happened.
Chase Lofton.
Oh, I thought you said there was going to be another surprise. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So let's. All right. So Kevin Wynn and CJ Wiley were in the beginning of the week. It was a great start to the week. Premium positions, top 200 prospects in the composite, respectively. Big wins for Florida State. Being out SEC schools, guys in the state of Georgia, which is an emphasis for FSU. So yeah, let's move to a surprise commitment, Zach. And it was a surprise in the sense that, like, we didn't know when it was going to happen. We'd heard, I'll let you break down the recruitment, but you had a little bit of an insight that FSU was trending there. But you got that heads up so quickly to where you weren't able to actually go ahead and prepare for anything. So sometimes it'd be like that. But let's talk about it. Myron Charles, 4-star defensive tackle from Port Charlotte, Florida, down in Southwest Florida. We'll talk about his game and whatnot. But Zach, let's break down kind of the recruitment and how he ended up becoming a Seminole.
Yeah, well, Myron Charles, I think back in either February or March, I attended an Under Armour camp in Miami, and Myron Charles was there. He called FSU his leader there. I entered a crystal ball. I never moved off of it, even though, I'll get to some of the up and down of that recruitment later on. But yeah, I felt pretty confident reporting like now that Myron Charles did indicate that he was silently committed to Florida State in the spring, and that kind of carried through until the beginning of the summer. I do think he genuinely gave other schools a shot on his official visits in June. Most specifically, I think Texas made the biggest move, and they made a strong NIL push, which I had reported on our site. I mean, so much so that there was a Texas crystal ball entered for Myron Charles when he committed to Florida State. So they made a real push, and it wasn't just like Texas feeling confident. Like Florida State was definitely aware of the Longhorns in that recruitment. But I think Myron admitted this to Chris in his interview after he committed. Like FSU was where he wanted to go, and it was described to me beforehand as like a fit versus like the NIL factor with those two schools. And I really do think Florida State won out because of just the relationship that Myron had with Odell Higgins. Odell did a great job fostering that throughout this entire recruitment. And that kind of allowed Florida State to win out despite maybe not having the highest offer on the table. But yeah, like Brendan mentioned, I was driving back from Future 50, which is in Bradenton at IMG Academy, driving back to South Florida, made a few phone calls, got some positive buzz on Myron Charles. I didn't know that it was, imminent in the matter of like he was going to commit within 30 minutes of that phone call. But I mean, if I had gotten home, I probably would have put something up on Knowles 24/7 expressing, more confidence about FSU standing there. Nevertheless, a massive pickup for FSU, just huge, because we've noted on here countless times that Florida State needs to continue to improve its recruiting at not only premium positions, but especially along the defensive line, and more specifically on the interior. They just haven't landed a number of blue chip guys at that spot specifically in recent cycles. Well, now they have two committed in the span of a couple days in Kevin Wynn and Myron Charles. And those were their top two guys on the board. I mean, those essentially the only two besides an unrealistic guy like Justice Terry, who visited in June. But you land those top two, and they can kind of go big game hunting for Justice Terry now with those two secured. So yeah, just a massive win for Odell Higgins and the staff. And like I said, just seeing that uptick at that position specifically is a super encouraging sign for Florida State.
Yeah, Terry's a +1 kind of guy.
Yeah.
On Charles, I always really thought FSU is where I want to be. I took the official visits to go through them. I didn't want to be wrong. I never want to touch the portal, none of that. So I wanted to be sure of my decision. I also very directly just asked him essentially, did Texas finish second here and how close was it? It actually was really close. He said it came down ultimately to the people. So relationships, as Zach brought up. I think FSU deserves some credit for shutting this one down, getting it done. Myron said he committed on his official. We all know that only means so much. In this day and age, even a public commitment only means so much, but a private commitment means even less. With a public commitment, there's at least kind of that built-in pressure of your word, which still matters to some. But yeah, FSU got this done. I think it's an excellent job on their part. It's the best defensive tackle duo I can remember Odell landing in some time. That's a position where I think maybe FSU learned the lessons of the portal this past go-around. of you can't mess around and come up short. You know, as good as it was 2 years ago to land a Braden Fisk, and even before that, Fabian Lovett, I don't know that maybe this past go around, not to knock Grady Kelly. I like Grady Kelly personally a lot, but I think FSU understood that it's better to have them in-house than have to go searching for them maybe. And when you value two guys as you did, Kevin Wynn and Myron Charles, for the length and the substance you put into those recruitments, you want the return on it. And they got the return on it. And that's an excellent job on their part.
It got me thinking, Chris, what was probably the best D-tackle duo commitment since DeMarcus Christmas and Derek Noddy would have been 20.
Were they together? Yeah, that's
so.
That's a really good one. I mean, Christmas battled injuries throughout it. Noddy's a multi-time Super Bowl champion, long-time NFL career guy. So yeah, that's a really good duo. Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been about a decade. And
definitely since the Jimbo years.
Yeah, and Odell going and retweeting stuff on Twitter. Just like being on Twitter to me, it amuses me because it's not his wheelhouse. So it's not like doing this crazy victory lap, but like by his standards, I've enjoyed it. It's been fun to see. Myron Charles is a lot of fun, very raw, I feel like. Whereas Kevin Wynn, you know exactly what he is. So one technique, he's super strong, dominant in the level of competition. Whereas that's a little different. But Kevin Wynn is a 3-tech. They move him all over the place. What?
You said Kevin Wynn again.
Kevin Wynn again. Myron Charles. Sorry. Again, brain fasting. Not great. Myron Charles has moved all over the place. They put him at defensive end sometimes. Interior, like they'll put him as a 1-tech also. And he just does all sorts of fun things athletically. Super long arms, moves really well. Production isn't exactly what you want it to be. And there's some green elements to his game, kind of clean up the body a little bit. But like those two guys, both Wynn and Charles, like in a projection basis, like they're going to complement each other really well, I think, from a skill set perspective, which I like a lot. And so those are, again, two top 200 defensive tackles you have secured. Talk about premium positions. Like D-tackle is huge. That's becoming an increasingly important position in football, and money's going there. We saw that with the defensive tackles in the portal cycle, certainly in the NFL as well. If you can get to the quarterback from the heart of the trenches, right, instead of having to go around the edge, given how fast quarterback get rid of the ball now, like that's huge. And so you get two top-tier guys inside like that. That's a really big deal for Florida State, and that establishes what you can do for the rest of the class. Now you're going to start building it out a little bit. So that's another really big victory for Florida State. That was Friday night. Now moving to Saturday, let's talk about not a commitment per se, but a solidification. I made up a word, I think. Is that a word?
I don't think that's a word, but let's roll with it.
All right, solidification. Let's talk about the Tramel Jones recruitment. This has been a fairly hot topic for about a month now, as Florida was making a legitimate push at Florida State's long-time quarterback commitment. Tramel goes ahead and shuts it down on Saturday evening, does it publicly. Zach, let's talk about kind of the ups and downs of that recruitment, what was happening behind the scenes, and the impact, I guess, of getting your quarterback to go ahead and say no to a rival and yes to you again.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs in this recruitment. And I think it all kind of starts back in the spring. I mean, Florida, to go all the way back to when Tramel committed to Florida State in April of 2023, Florida offered Tramel Jones before FSU did. So they've been in on this recruitment for a long time, but they really turned up the heat with him, kind of working their quarterback board this year, and got him on campus multiple times in the spring. There was some worry there, but FSU still felt pretty good about, holding on to him. The summer rolls around, and that's where things get a little bit more interesting. I think UF, for the longest time, pretty much the entire month of May was, whether Tramel was going to take an OV to UF. And I was basically told, like, if he takes an OV to UF, he's not going to end up in FSU's class. So that was a huge topic of discussion. He doesn't take an OV to UF, but he does make a mid-June unofficial visit to Florida, which, obviously caused a lot of talk around that recruitment again. Well, the big weekend was his official visit weekend from June 21st to the 23rd. And that was, hey, let's get it. Questions answered for both sides. Let's see where this thing's at. We're not going to exit this weekend without having a clear answer as to whether, Tramel is going to be in the class or not. And I think, just working the behind the scenes of this recruitment, like I think Trammell genuinely wanted to be locked in and shut down with Florida State, but I mean, his dad was being a good dad and trying to make sure that he was making the right decision, and Florida was making an all out push for him, so wanted to give them a shot. So not faulting them there, but FSU, from their perspective, they obviously want to have their quarterback one locked in, and candidly, like before the official visit weekend, I thought there was a real chance that he was not going to end up in FSU's class. But coming out of the weekend, sounded like both parties kind of, talked it through. And Trammell told me that he had informed quarterback coach Tony Tokars that he was locked in and shut down, and they would be announcing that, within the next week. He, on Saturday morning, called Mike Norvell. They talked a little bit just about different prospects that FSU's after. And, Trammell's, we'll get into that, but Trammell's super into to helping Florida State on the recruiting trail. He let Norvell know of the news that he'd be shutting it down later that day around 6 p.m. He goes ahead, he tweets it out saying, hey, like I'm shut down. We had a whole story that we dropped. And I talked to Trammell earlier that day, just kind of breaking down the decision, what went into it. And, the impact of, I asked him about the impact of him kind of announcing that he was shutting it down, and how he might, how he thinks that could help Florida State on the recruiting trail, especially with guys that he knows. So yeah, man, I mean, he's super active, like I said, in helping Florida State recruit. He knows all their top targets that they're after. He obviously was joined by around 18 other official visitors that weekend that he took that trip to Florida State. So he's very familiar with a lot of those guys and their recruitments. So yeah, I mean, he kind of teased a big month of July for Florida State on the recruiting trail. And yeah, I mean, I agree with him. I think it is going to be a big month, and it is, I viewed it as, this recruitment, I kind of been talking about it. Like, you want to exit the month of June knowing your plan at quarterback for this class, whether that's Trammell in the boat or without him, right? Like you need to have that answered. And I thought it was a really good sign for Florida State to get that question answered and have it, in a public fashion like that, with him shutting it down.
Glad to have it put to bed. I think the young man was able to pick the place he wanted to go. Ultimately, I really have no issue with how he went about it. I think this day and age, all the factors that are involved in recruiting for a young man who committed as early as he did at the position he plays, he's more than welcome to truly figure it out. I'd rather him figure it out than show up and decide to leave immediately. With the portal, I just think that's sort of a thing. I get it leads to a lot of hand-wringing and uncomfortableness, but like, it is what it is type of thing in recruiting this day and age. I am fully comfortable with guys who commit early, kind of understanding maybe I shouldn't have. And I think in Trammell's case, he wanted to make sure he did for the right reasons. And on the case of what Zach brought up about him being a premium recruiter for FSU, he is. One thing that impressed me exiting on June 23rd at the end of that Sunday of the official visits, multiple guys unprompted brought up Trammell talking to him about FSU and why he chose it and what he liked about it. And Solomon Thomas kind of had a similar narrative where he did that with a few guys too. And, I think that's good. If a young man can tell another young man in a peer situation why they chose a place they went to without being prompted, it's pretty good reinforcement that's the place they want to be at, or they at least understand why they are choosing that place. I think that's a good thing for FSU.
I think I always thought, even as things were getting kind of weird behind the scenes, that Florida State would hold on to him, just in the vacuum of, like, if you're a quarterback and stability is going to matter a ton there, like, who are you going to commit to, given what Florida State just did with Jordan Travis? Not to say that Florida hasn't done a good job with their quarterback development, but just the potential instability of the coaching staff there. I always thought that Trammell would end up at Florida State and cooler heads would prevail. That just seemed the most logical thing to me. I'm trying to think whether I want to instigate Zach and call him Chicken Little, but we'll just keep moving along. I just kind of passively did it instead. Fair.
Yeah, it's not.
There's a lot of phone calls of like,
it's not based on any intel, right?
Yeah, but of course it's based on intel, but also like,
yeah, I was just freaking out for no reason.
Is the kid just going to flip to Florida with the coach on the hot seat this year when he's been committed to Florida State for a year?
There are other recruits that Florida State's after that are trending to Florida or committed to Florida. But go ahead.
What was it?
I'm going to move on and talk about tight end Chase Lofton, who committed to Florida State last evening. By last evening, I mean Saturday evening. Another good case of FSU winning a battle, kind of like we talked about with CJ Wiley. They went into Georgia and beat out Georgia for a kid that Georgia really wanted. Well, FSU went into Nebraska, got the number 2, I believe, prospect in that state over Nebraska. But truthfully, I think they beat out Texas A&M even more than they beat out the Huskers. It's a credit to Chris Thompson, really good recruiter. I know people think I'm an ass kisser when it comes to Chris Thompson. I don't care. I like the guy. I think he's a hell of a recruiter. And he does a good job. He's great at relationships. He's known the Lofton family for a long time because he dealt with Braden, who's at Kansas State, Chase's older brother, a little bit. And they liked him. And he got him here, I think it was April 12th for a visit. That laid the foundation, got him back for an official visit. And he realized this is the place he wanted to be. Yeah, but they're good at what they do. Like, I don't know, man. I think I'm being cantankerous maybe to a degree, but like, at some point, can we give the staff a little credit for what they're doing, like recruiting wise?
Not in June. That's what July's for.
But like in general, like they are nailing a lot of top targets. And yes, they're going to miss some too. And that stinks. And there's probably going to be a position that pisses us off at the end of the day. I'm going to lean towards edge just because it feels like the safest bet right now. But like in general, they're doing a good job. If they can pull off what we think they might pull off in the next week with like linebacker, then well, there's another narrative going down the drain and dying a brutal death. And at some point, like they're pretty good at this. Like they get paid pretty good money and they do a pretty good job, and the returns have been pretty good. Anyway, I'll get off myself.
They have stuff to sell now, and that's people were mad last cycle, and I understood it. It was December did not feel good for a variety of reasons. And people were like, well, we just had the best season ever, and why aren't we closing on stuff? I remember asking Mike about this on signing day of like, how quickly do the on-field results
manifest
dividends? Yeah. And his answer, I wish I had pulled it up and thought of it before, but it was thoughtful in the sense of like, yes, it's helping now, but it's going to help more like down the road too, I think was the baseline of that. And it can take a while for that. The transfer portal, instant results, results show up instantly. I think high school recruiting, it takes a little bit of time. And so you're now seeing 23 wins over 2 years, has you in a class that you have 8 commitments right now, and all 8 of them are blue chip prospects. Until Chase Lofton committed, think about this: a blue chip prospect lowered your average ranking. You had the highest ranked average commit in the country going into the weekend.
And
the 4-star tight end lowered it. Like that.
Lofton's a good example too of like you feel good about Hollis Davidson, and you go and get a guy who the industry says is a better player, and like you may still get Hollis. That's to be determined. It's going to be FSU or Auburn. It truthfully wouldn't surprise me either which way, but like coming out of the official, Hollis felt like he was in the bag, and you still land Chase Lofton. I just, I think they're doing a very good job personally in recruiting, other than edge, and we'll see how offensive line plays out, but they got a real shot of putting together a really special offensive line class. It's pretty impressive as a whole. Like I just struggled to I sat through last June and thought, man, some of these people are just idiots. This June, I'm like, they can go be idiots if they want to. I'm not going to give them the time of day because it's a waste of time. But I would hope that maybe when August rolls around, they have a pretty damn good class assembled. That like maybe at some point people decide, oh, they're actually pretty good at this job they're doing.
And to be fair to the edge stuff real quick, they do have the number 1 edge player committed. I understand there's some volatility with Olsen to an extent, but like he did publicly shut it down. Like you should feel as good as you possibly can.
They still need to get a second in that group, and they need somebody that we feel is quality. Clayton would have been a basement level guy, not to bring that back up, but he would have been your base of that class, and you passed on it because you felt like you had a good shot at guys above it. One of those off the board immediately, Zion Grady to Ohio State. So now it's a Jared Smith situation or a Jalen Wiggins situation. I can't sit here and honestly state that I feel confident they land either of those 2 guys. So it just is what it is. I'm not sweating it. They've done a good job in the portal at the position, but I think their goal as a staff is to have 2 high-level high school edges in this class, and I'm not sure that they're going to attain that based on current results.
And the skepticism is warranted just based on prior history too. So
Can I talk quickly about Chase Lofton?
Yeah,
sure. Sorry, I got on my soapbox. I apologize.
No, you're good. Good points. But yeah, with Lofton, I just found it a really intriguing recruitment just because, I mean, so everyone was kind of watching Nebraska, and you kind of mentioned that, Chris, like they got the last official visit. Predictions started going in across the industry for Nebraska that weekend, but like I had heard coming out of the weekend that it was Texas A&M and FSU, and those were kind of the two that were battling it out in the months prior. But it was a real battle that last week. Like Florida State spent a lot of hours on the phone with Lofton and his camp, combating narratives. Like I heard a big narrative here was the SEC versus ACC stuff. And FSU did a good job of kind of laying out.
A&M's going to be in whatever they're going to take.
Did they just send them all to court filings and like?
Yeah, well, more so.
We're not celebrating the ACC becoming 18 teams on July 1st.
Yeah, I think more so with A&M, it's like they have like one 10-win season, and however long it's been, like they had an 11-win season with Johnny Manziel.
It's a cult.
Yeah, and also like it's like you're gonna bang your chest about the SEC, but like you haven't actually done anything in the conference. So I think the point was like if you want to win, like you're gonna have a better shot to win at Florida State. And I think that messaging really hit home. And I want to give shout outs here. Like Mike Norvell played a big role in this recruitment. Like he loves Chase Lofton, and in that last week, like that was a big factor. Then another shout out, tight end assistant Preston Brady did an awesome job here. Like just obviously Chris Thompson kind of leads the efforts with FSU's tight end recruiting, but he has two assistants in DJ Daniels and Preston Brady who do an excellent job at relating to recruits, and was told that he did a really good job with Chase Lofton's recruitment. So no, just a big win for FSU on the trail. They got their guy at tight end, and then I kind of mentioned this on the board, and you kind of brought it up, Chris. Like Hollis Davidson's going to be an interesting one, like how this commitment impacts that. I think FSU would be open to taking two commitments, but I think they're kind of might reevaluate where things are at now. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Like I'm not ready to predict Hollis Davidson to end up in Florida State's class. But like Chris said, like I think after the OV weekend that Hollis Davidson was at Florida State for, like I felt pretty good about their chances. But now I'm going to have to do some more digging on whether he'll end up at FSU or he'll go back to Auburn where he was formerly committed.
I think there was an idea that you would maybe take both, but Chase Lofton was the priority probably. And now that you have that, I think you evaluate what the rest of the board is starting to look like too. Some of the other commits you've gotten room becomes a thing too. I really do like Hollis Davidson.
There's also an element of first come, first serve. Like,
yeah.
You have an opportunity when you exit that official visit, when you're meeting with Mike Norvell, to commit to him. In Hollis's case, he rushed into his prior decision. Him and his family wanted to take time. So you're welcome to do that. But like in that time, things may transpire.
Chris, has FSU ever, I'm sure they have at some point, but the last time they've gotten a Nebraska commitment.
Oh man, I don't know offhand. I'd have to research it.
Know that. Yeah, that's but so Chase Lofton's fun. Like we didn't really talk about his game. He's 6'6", 215 pounds. So like that's the first thing he has to bulk up, right? So there's
they think he can. Yeah.
He also needs a good quarterback. Like on his film. Whew.
Well, the whole Nebraska level of competition thing doesn't look particularly great. But what is so the positives here is one, the athleticism, right? Like he is extremely athletic at 6'6". I think he's like verified stuff. He's running the 4.6 range. Unverified, like at a Nebraska camp last year, was like in the 4.4 range. Your vertical jumps above 30 inches verified. I think again, like he's been at like 35 inches in the vertical at a Nebraska camp. So there's a good smattering of like baseline athleticism. You watch the tape, like the route running's really, really crisp at his size, very fluid, natural athlete. In the length, like the wingspan project, I think frame wise, like he'll be able to get to 240 eventually. It just might be somewhat of a slow burn there, but like athletically, there's a lot of a lot of upside and a lot of potential of what he can become as a receiving threat at tight end. I think usage-wise, like, people are asking, "Oh, is this gonna be a Johnny Wilson type of guy?" No, like, this is a tight end. I think they view him as what Kyle Morlock was used as this past year, built similarly to Kyle Morlock. I think you project him into that sort of frame. The upside is that he probably is gonna be more fluid and nimble than Kyle Morlock is. I think that's the hope, at least, and that's what he projects as. So, um, those are all the commitments that they've gotten this week, and we're recording this on Sunday morning. Sunday evening is going to take us into a commitment ceremony with four-star cornerback Zae Thomas. We're talking about the premium positions: quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive end, and cornerback. That's the only one they don't have as a corner right now. Zae Thomas, who could play corner or safety, is a guy that has crystal balls, multiple in for Florida State right now, but it is a Clemson FSU battle. Zachary, let's talk about Zae Thomas real quick. What time is that at? 8 o'clock?
Yeah, it's kind of up. It'll be around like 8 to 8:40 p.m.
South Florida commitment time.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big event. I mean, it's literally, so Zae Thomas is, we've talked about on here before. He's a member of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and they're holding the event at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino and Hotel in Hollywood, Florida. And I'm told it's going to be a big deal. So yeah, I'm sure. I think he's going to go live on his Instagram. I'll be there to cover it in person tonight. So yeah, I think you mentioned FSU doesn't have a corner yet. I think they're going to start Zae Thomas if they land him out at corner. And they're just so, like, they move guys around so much in the secondary. Like, I don't think it's a huge deal where you have them listed to start. But
they do
I think
like to start him at corner generally if there's some ambiguity for what it's worth. So that makes sense.
I think Pat Surtain prefers that that guys can play corner. But I think his highest upside is probably at safety. But he is a really solid corner at the high school level. Like, he plays that for American Heritage High School, and I don't know if there's a high school in the country that's doing a better job of churning out defensive back talent than Heritage in recent years. So yeah, I mean, I've wrote about this countless times, but it just feels like FSU is destined to land Zae Thomas. I mean, there's just so many connections there. Like I mentioned, with the Seminole Tribe, he also was coached in his freshman year of high school by current FSU defensive backs coach Patrick Surtain Sr. It's, a match made in heaven, and I think I'd be super surprised if he didn't pick FSU tonight. Clemson is a strong factor. Like, they've been involved for quite a bit, and they made a strong push on his OV there. But I do think FSU will win out. And yeah, I mean, he's one of the top cornerback / defensive back talents in South Florida and in the entire state of Florida this cycle.
Looking at what's ahead as well. So Chris mentioned that there might be some narratives that get busted in the next few days. We'll see, right? But there's a chance for that to exist on July 1st. So that is on Monday. Zaydrius Rainey-Sale from, right? Saleh, Zach?
Yeah.
Okay. From Washington, 4-star linebacker, top 150 guy nationally, is making a decision. I think FSU, Washington, UCLA are kind of the trio there that probably stand out the most. And then the next day, Tuesday, Tavion Wallace from South Georgia is making a decision. He's another top 150 prospect, and has a smattering of SEC interest. I think Georgia, Florida, and then Florida State in the mix there. How are we feeling about those, Zach? And what are you going to do if they go 2 for 2? Are we doing it like a rapid, instant reaction podcast that you just have to Chris just gets to scream at you, maybe, would be the fair result of that? I'm not sure what we do to celebrate it, but let's talk about that.
We'll get Zach a Randy Cookin shirt if they get both of them.
Yeah.
Randy Cook.
One of those meme shirts. No, I mean, it would be Matt. Like, those are obviously two of their top linebacker targets. Are they both signing in the next few days? I didn't know. I was asking you guys. But anyway, no, I mean, it would be big to land both those guys. Rainey-Sale, he might be from the West Coast, but he's a guy that FSU loves. They worked him out in person last summer. I mean, Chris was there. He's a real dude at that spot. And
I'll put it this way: I've never seen Randy Shannon be as like into watching a kid work out as I was that day, and Mike Norvell was right there with him.
Yeah.
Also, I undersold Tavion Wallace. I said he's a top 150 guy because Rainey-Sale
top
is
40. Yeah.
He's awesome. So
Yeah.
sorry, continue.
No, but yeah, with Rainey-Sale's recruitment, I've kind of talked about this a lot, like the mom factor and her being okay with him going across the country to play college football. And I think they've kind of alleviated that. Like, I don't view that as a concern for Florida State. And because of that, like, I feel pretty good about FSU's chances with Rainey-Sale a day ahead of his scheduled commitment tomorrow. I don't know what time he's announcing at, but
it shows it as 3 o'clock on the network. I don't know if that's 100% correct.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Eastern, 3 o'clock.
The
it's
finalists
having flashbacks, West Coast commitments, the Jaden Lars would be marathon.
Yeah.
Never forget.
That was legendary.
A cord? Did we need a cord? I think it was a cord.
So Washington and UCLA are the other finalists for Zae Rainey-Sale, and I think Washington's probably the other school to watch, but it's kind of been up and down, like in the past week or weeks since his official visit to Florida State, just who's kind of in the lead spot. But at last check, it feels like FSU is in the best position to land him tomorrow. But we'll definitely update you if anything changes on that on the site.
I had somebody tell me in recent days this week about ZRS that FSU has made it very, all caps, compelling. That person who has a lot of West Coast ties still thought he would stay home, but they weren't overly confident. And at this point, I don't think he had formally made a decision. I think Zach's information is more current than my information, which is earlier in the week.
Yeah. I think you move to Tavion Wallace, who is just, I mean, by every sense of the word, is a freak at the linebacker position. Ranked as a top 36 player in the country, the number 3 linebacker in the nation by 24/7 Sports. 6'1", 215 pounds. Like, those measurables don't stand out a ton, but he has super long arms. And I think the most important thing for him is he runs a 10.61 in the 100-meter dash as a linebacker, which is absurd. His older brother just got drafted in the 3rd round by the Carolina Panthers, Trevin Wallace, who played at Kentucky. Shout out Clay Fink. And yeah, man, I mean, I don't have a final word on Tavion Wallace. I know Florida State felt pretty good about their standing with him coming out of the OB that he took on the 21st through 23rd weekend. From my perspective, just talking to Tavion, like, I just genuinely think he likes Florida State more than any other school. And it's wild to say that, considering like the other schools involved for him. He grew up a fan of Florida. Florida is a top 3 finalist for him. And then he's from the state of Georgia, and Georgia is prioritizing him like a top target at linebacker. So this isn't like a layup recruitment for FSU by any means, but I just think Florida State's going to win out. I've had a crystal ball logged for Tavion Wallace for, I think, since January. Yeah. So I felt like FSU has been in the lead here, and he's kind of admitted that, not as much recently leading up to his decision, which makes sense. Like, you want to have more intrigue, but yeah, right now I'd probably predict FSU, but I don't feel good enough to stand on the table and be super confident in that, just because I don't know if he's actually made a final decision. But we should have more on that here coming up.
FSU offered him in March of 2023. They were like his 5th or 6th offer at that point. He has visited here, I believe, 5 times since that offer. Kind of indicative of it. He's always consistently spoken very highly of FSU after each and every visit.
Where do we think the term "stand on a table" comes from?
Probably Revolutionary America. I would presume they probably used to do that to address a room.
Yeah, it seems like some kind of like parliament, like people in
I may be channeling Hamilton right now. I don't know.
I think that's as good a bet as it.
I just looked it up. Men once stood to show respect when a woman, elderly person, or dignitary entered the room or approached the dining table.
But on the table?
On the table?
I don't know.
I feel like they stand at the table to show that. I feel like on the table is to address people.
Regardless, Zach's not willing to stand on the table regardless of who walks in the room right now.
One other linebacker making a decision I believe in between the two we just chatted about was Gavin Nix. FSU is a finalist. We expected to go elsewhere, probably Miami. Bradenton IMG Academy, talented kid, smart kid. But yeah, that one's kind of Miami's been a pace car there for a good while. We think that maintains.
And then I'm not sure what our schedule is going to permit with the holiday coming up with 4th of July in the next few days here. I do love the idea of Zach having to come on and just do a linebacker of FSU Goes 2 for 2 podcast with him just getting.
Dude, I'm like, I will happily do that. Like, I will be the first one to compliment their efforts there. Like, if they do land two guys.
Dunk tank. But regardless, we'll see how the schedule permits. If we don't talk before then, I at least want to acknowledge there might be another prospect that FSU would be trending for on the 4th of July, and that's Peyton Joseph, the 4-star offensive lineman from Middle Georgia. I think Warner Robins.
I'm usually a big opponent of 4th of July announcements.
Opponent.
Opponent.
Opponent. You don't want them. Okay.
Against them. But I'm cool with his because it's been set forever. So, like, he's not pulling a rabbit out of a hat on me late. Now, if he gives me a pre-write, I'll really love him. Just remember that big P. But yeah,
right.
FSU versus Memphis for Peyton Joseph. I think we all think it's FSU.
Yeah,
Alex Atkins has been recruiting him for almost 4+ years now.
A long overdue, and I just put in a crystal ball. I probably should have a while ago, but I'll put that in. So
you're a real trendsetter.
Thank you. Zach was the first. Going back to our commit draft, guys, that we did last episode, let's take a little time just to reflect. I'm not going to say this because I'm the front runner right now. That I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't. If I was losing, I would be doing this right now. This isn't me patting myself on the back type of deal. Even if I pat myself on the back, Chris, you currently have one, which you've only had one person announced so far, and that's Kevin Wynn. So you're 1 for 1. Tavion Wallace, Josh Petty, Ty Haywood, and Gavin Nix also on the board. Nix we're not feeling great on, so that'll be a guy eliminated for you. But if you get 2
over under set at 3.5.
Oh, that's an under.
I think I lost, by the way, because I just saw that an Auburn writer on On3 posted a prediction for Hollis Davidson to Auburn.
That brings us to
But at
Zach.
the time of the draft, it was a great pick, Zach.
It was.
Chase Lofton just went and stole his thunder.
So Zach has Peyton Joseph, which feeling good with right now. So you'll be on the board potentially by July 4th. Better late than never, I guess. Hollis Davidson next. Dalen McCutcheon, the wide receiver, and then Jalen Wiggins and Shamar No, who committed to USC. So not only are you not going to have guys that seem like they're like actively like committing to Florida State at this time, but you're also just getting options eliminated or getting close to eliminated. So not looking great for you, Zach.
We'll give you Lamont Rogers as like a throw-in.
Yeah, we might have to.
It's not as far-fetched as it felt when we did that draft.
Then
but I still don't think it's here. Sorry.
Yours truly has Byron Lewis, which Zach, you had shared that might be a later commitment timeline, correct?
Yeah, like I heard, like maybe September.
No, so we may have to wait to crown me the champion.
Real quick on Lewis, should FSU make an effort like they did with Myron Charles to get it done?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of context to these recruitments, and like I think it might be a thing where they wanted it for that date for like a special reason or something. Florida State's not going to like push back on that.
Right.
Like, they obviously want to get these guys to commit as soon as possible, but they're also not going to.
Lockett's doing it on someone's birthday. Khalil Lockett's doing it on someone's birthday. I think Josh Petty's August 12th is specific to something on that day.
Yeah. No, I mean, they'd love to get Byron Lewis in the boat as soon as possible, but if he wants to do it in September, like they'll probably just be cool with that. Obviously, the other top running back target, whose decision timeline is probably going to be sooner than that. At last check, is Usman Kroma out of Lee County High School in Georgia. Like, I'll update on that if I hear more, but haven't heard any sort of trend in that recruitment as of late.
So we'll have to wait to crown me the champion, I think, maybe until September with Byron Lewis. But Zae Thomas, feeling good with. Myron Charles already in the boat. CJ Wiley already in the boat. And then Vernell Brown, which with Tramell Jones now like locked into Florida State, I think that makes that a better value add as the final pick. So just saying, I draft well.
But you're not going to go 5 for 5. We're not going to have an LSU moment here.
Okay, we'll see.
The old people in recruiting will understand the 5 for 5 LSU reference.
I don't get it.
Shout out Shane Dixon. They had a closing where they thought they were going to go 5 for 5, and if I recall correctly, they might have gone 1 for 5. It became a thing for the next several cycles for them because fans really struggle to let things go in recruiting.
Do they?
They do.
All right. Anything else before we get out of here? We're going up to an hour. My blood sugar is not great, and I have to start the colon cleansing process in the next 2 hours. So
just a few guys that could possibly make decisions here coming up. I think Ty Haywood is one to watch. I think it's an FSU Alabama battle. I'd probably lean Alabama, but FSU feels like it has a real shot there. Burnell Brown could be making a decision in the month of July. I think that's a FSU versus UF battle with the Gators probably trending. Lamont Rogers is another one that could be a soon decision. And then still checking in on a recruitment like Ladarian Clardy. Want to get more info there, but obviously we felt like FSU led in the month of June after their early June OV with him. See where things are at. Bryce Fitzgerald, I think, is a 4-star DB out of Miami Columbus. I think that's a UF versus FSU battle. And another one that could decide soon, Dalen McCutcheon, the receiver out of Lovejoy, Texas, 4-star. He could be making a decision kind of in the next week, is what I've heard. So just a few guys to watch there. And I dropped a huge intel piece, which is some rapid fire bullets in the last day on Those 24/7 with the up-to-date intel on a bunch of these guys. So definitely go check that out.
Cool. All right, guys. That was a fun episode. It's fun when things are going well in recruiting and we have stuff to go over, and the analysis can kind of carry us. And yeah, it's nice. And the message board generally a little happier. Oh, there's a few doom and gloomers out there still, but Christie's going to eradicate them, I think.
They're welcome to have their opinion.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later.